many different, in the animal kingdom, there are many different, like pigeons, they marry their sister. It's like the parents leave 2 eggs, a boy and a girl, and they have children. Why did Hashem make that Klal Yisrael, that humans should marry from one family to the other, that we all have different backgrounds and different natures, is to work on ourselves, to become better. It's like to integrate and work out stuff. But that in itself needs a lot of practice, a lot of work, and until we become better beings. But when a huge challenge comes into life, that's when we have to bring our marriage to the next level. Just 2 months ago, they hired me to speak by Mikimi. If you know what it is, you shouldn't know. It's an organization that helps patients and families of patients that were diagnosed with a very sad situation. And they had a Melav Malka. They got in Muncie. There were like 150 people. So they wanted me to give them some guidance and some comfort. And so I spoke some chizuk and how to deal with different types of issues and with the other kids and the families. But really, there was a question and answer session afterwards, and all of them, there was very common. They were saying, how do we deal with it? I deal with the issue very different than my husband deals with it, or than my wife deals with it. We all have a different outlook how to deal with the child. How do we tell the other kids? But I think it's even more so when we deal with with children that challenge us, or I don't like the labels, the OTDs, or whatever label it is. That's when I think there could be a lot of, I don't want to use the word conflict, or it could be a very different way and a different approach how to look at it. Let's say, for instance, people are shopping in Walmart, and suddenly there's an explosion at the other side of the store. There's an explosion of some smoke. Right? There's a few hundred people in the store. Everybody's going to deal with it very different. Some people are going to run out. Some people are going to grab others and run out. Some are going to run towards it to see how they can help. And some are going to freeze. Right? There's flight and freeze. They don't say freeze. I added freeze. But you see a deer, the light shines in the eye, it freezes. It doesn't know what to do. It's not aggressive and it doesn't run away. But many people do that. We freeze. We don't know what to do. And within that is a difference between the men and the women, how they're going to see and deal with this. When there's a tragedy happens in a family, something goes very wrong, a health issue, or a child that goes off the derech or just chooses to going through different stages, usually the husband and wife have a very different outlook. There are certain things, we all have different egos. Men have egos and women have egos. We all have our own COVID, but it's very different. Sometimes the husband or the father is more concerned about shame, what is the street going to say, and how to deal with this or deal with that. And the mother, the wife, is dealing with a total different issues that bothers her. What's going to be with the other kids? She's her own maternal. So there's different types of concerns. They both are concerned for the same thing. They want the child to grow up healthy and happy and from and productive. But what happens is, if you don't work together as a team, obviously it's not going to be. Not only it's not going to be. It's not going to work out good. It's going to be destructive. It's just not going to be. There are so many times in life that we have to work together on an extra level. Let's say looking for a shidduch, for a good thing. You look for shidduch for your child. It's very common that you have a different outlook than your wife or than your husband. It's a very different what you're looking for. How does you go about it? Should we call shadchum? Should we not call? There's always, in general, there's always, I deal with couples a lot in Shalom Bayis. It's so common that he's always on time, she's always late, or the other way around. He's a perfectionist, she's a Slav, or the other way around. I just had a couple, they went on vacation. This guy spent, like $5,000 on vacation. They went to Siddur or whatever. He wanted to run around. He spent so much money, he wanted to run around. And she said, what do you mean? I worked so hard the whole year. I want to sit in the Yam HaMelech on the beach and just relax. I'm not interested. And sometimes I had the opposite. Everybody's different styles. Some people want to go on vacation and just relax, and some want to run around. Some are spenders, some are more saviors. It's part of Hashem's, I don't want to say comedy, but that's what he does. We could date and go out, I don't know how many times, and when you get married, you get to see there's so many things that were opposite. But that's the beauty of life. That's the beauty of marriage, that we grow together and we integrate. If you're a lemon and she's an orange, the children are going to be grapefruits, right? So it's good to integrate. But when it comes to a challenge with something way more, way beyond than just, always have to wait for you. You're never on time, or you're always, stop spending on this. It's all these differences. Is when dealing with your own child, your own inner, and what you're sharing together, it can be so painful. And even more so when the child is already in a stage where it's just I don't want to say dreadful, but it's already in a state where it's a danger mode. There's a lot of thoughts back. Last year I was here for the Shabbos, and so many people just wanted to tell me how it happened. Oh, when he was in this yeshiva, he was kicked out, and I shouldn't have let him leave, and then he went to here, or she went to here. I kept on hearing that everybody's repeating the process, how it happened, because suddenly we find ourselves, our child is doing all kinds of stuff, and it's already. So what happens is this could bring blame. Oh, my husband should have listened to me when we started in the first place. We shouldn't have sent him to Eretz Yisrael. That was a mistake. Or we sent her to this school, or we listened to this one, we listened to that one. There's a lot of those kind of things. So obviously we have to minimize that if we want to be productive and work together to save the child. And ultimately to save the whole family. If you're working together as a team, you look and you understand the difference, the gender differences, the way a woman sees the situation, the man sees the situation, and you see beyond, yeah?
So I want to ask, when we go back to the Torah, the first time we see Yitzchak and Rivka, they're not agreeing on Esau, right?
Right.
She has her own issue with him. He treated him like he's gold, and she
Right.
doesn't.
Right.
So
maybe it was planned. It was good cop, bad
no,
cop.
but the way I look at it, I'm saying like maybe sometimes it's not so bad to say to the kids, "This is what Abba feel. This is what I feel." But I'm agreeing with Abba.
That's okay. That's okay on a daily basis and a regular thing. We'll talk about it in a general plan, right? You're setting up a plan how to deal with this child. The child is out. The child is a teenager. She knows that he knows what he's doing already. At least I think so. And they're out in the street. They're big. There's huge decisions that have to be made together. Obviously, it could be on a daily basis. A child could ask you, even a little kid could ask you, I want to have a snack before I'm going to bed tonight. And you can say yes, and then they ask daddy, and daddy says no. That's okay. It's not a conflict. It doesn't take away the stability of the child. It's not. That's not the. We talk about the plans and how to deal with the whole situation. The worst thing in marriages in general is that people sometimes grow apart. While you're dating, while you meet, you're on the same level in Yiddishkeit and other things, and then eventually, he gets his influences, she gets hurt, they read different papers, or they get 20 years later, they find themselves on two different sides. And the kids end up feeling that, but if you have to work together to save a child, you have to start growing together. And growing together is a choice. It's a choice. It's a decision. We have to make a decision that we have to work on this project together, on saving this child as much as we can and the rest of the children. And that's something that why we're talking about this today. And I think that there are many different speeches on this topic, because obviously this is something that has to be discussed. This is just not, again, as I said before, this is not only with parents that are struggling with teens. This is parents that are struggling with children that are not healthy, or married kids that are not happily married. And there's so many other things that life could bring. We're forced, basically, when we have a struggle like this, we're forced to work on our marriage and to bring it to the next level. And that's something that we have to focus on. So I think that getting a little more practical, hands-on, how to bring the marriage together and a place that we could work as a team to save this child and to make all the other kids stable. I always say, just before that, just 1 second, I always say that people say, I remember like 25 years ago, 30 years ago, Rabbi Abraham J. Twersky was the first one that came out with a book, and he was talking about self-confidence, right? It was like a new thing at the time, and everybody was into it. It took a few years till it penetrated, and all the speakers. Now it's a given. We all know. We got to give your child confidence. You have to build them up. You have to give them. And then love. Everybody knows you have to give your child love. We all know we have to give our children love. I mean, post-Holocaust, the My parents, whatever, the parents of the 60-year-olds, their parents were Holocaust survivors. They didn't give. If you survived, you were good. Wasn't. But today's generation, we need to give. But there's one word that is not mentioned enough, and that is security and stability. If a child feels secure, my parents are always going to be here to protect me. That's a very important ingredient. If you don't have that, you can give them as much love as you want. The child doesn't feel comfortable in this world. They don't feel secure. You can give them love and try to build up their confidence. It's not going to work. You need to give them security. They need to feel secure. And what makes them feel secure? If Tati and Mami are a team. If the husband and wife are not a team, again, it's not like I said before, if he wants a snack before he goes to bed. I'm talking in a stable. The child is not going to feel stable. And the child doesn't feel stable. Whatever you put into the child afterwards, it all falls out. It's like building a cup, and then you could fill it up. If it has holes, and if it's not a stable cup, you could pour in whatever you want, it's going to leak out. The structure of the human being, the structure of the child, of every child, is to feel that my father and my mother are a team, and this is a stable home. It's okay if both parents think a little different in different things. It's okay. But they need to feel that. And how did they feel that? By working together. Say, ask daddy, ask mom, or different things. They see working together. They see that the parents respect each other. They see the parents love each other, and that's fine. That's saying it. But when it comes to a story like this, you have this child that's starting to become at risk, acting up by the Shabbos meals, or throwing things. I need to tell you all this. We all have different stories, but it's in the same category. The other kids are looking consciously and even more so subconsciously. How are my two pillars, my father and my mother, going to deal with this together? When there's an eruption in the house, there's an explosion, and there's an 18-year-old making a tantrum in the house, how is my father and my mother going to handle this? Are they strong? Do they know how to deal with this? Or she's going to scream, you deal with it. No, you deal with it. I don't know what to say. Why are you screaming at him? You should be nice. Don't fight it out in the bedroom. Work it out how you want to deal with it. But as soon as the other children, that child and other children feel that when there's a problem in the house, the parents are not a team together, they're not working on this together, this takes away the stability of the other kids and this child also. They want to see you being a team and a strong team that's giving the security and the stability in the home. So I think that the first thing is, the women are like this one, communication. Oh, you don't communicate more. You have to communicate more. Yes, communication is like this. To say it quick, the Maral always talks about there's a doimem, a tzemayich, a chayin, a medaber, right? So the doimem and the tzemayich are so different. The doimem is a water, a stone, it's nothing. It's tzemayich, it's a growth. And then there's a medaber, which is us. What's the difference between a chai and a medaber? That a chai is alive, an animal could come and go, it could also reproduce and everything, but it can't talk. But is it is the talking is the talking that the difference between us and the chai? Isn't it the cycle? We have cycle, we have brains, we could build bridges. We could go up to the moon. An animal can't, more than his own territory, he doesn't know how to do it. He doesn't. And the answer he gives is because medaber, communicating, is what makes us more than the animals. It's not so much asaychel. Of course, asaychel is huge. Our brains is amazing. But if you can't communicate, if you can't give over, and you can't tell the other party who you're communicating to your problems, your issues with them, or communicating, communicating your feelings or your understandings, and understand and listen and everything that comes along with communication, you're not a medaber, you're still a chai. That's what makes us special. So if a team works together and there's a huge project, when we have a child like this, it's a huge, very serious, needless to say, project. And it's not just something that happens on its own. We need to work on it. And how is it going to be if the couple has to designate and put away extra time to communicate how are we dealing with this kid? And not only that, how are we dealing with each other? So if you put away time, extra time, because there's so much stress in the house, and because there's so much issues, you put away a time, you go on a date once a week. You could be married 25 years, I don't care, you just go on a date. You take a time every Wednesday night, Tuesday night, Sunday night, whatever it is, an hour, 2 hours, it doesn't have to cost money, nothing, just close your phone, not a vibrate, close, the husband and the wife, you have time to look at each other in the eyes and just, it's time, not about the situation, just general, just to build a relationship, just to have extra time. If you have more stress, you have to add more of the good things. There always has to be a balance. And if a couple has time together, they verbring together and talk and communicate, I think that alone, it gives koyach to deal later with the other problems. It has to be that. Number 2, you have to become your spouse's therapist. We could all have outside a therapist who we talk to everything. But at the end of the day, a wife wants her husband to understand and know her feelings about the situation with the child. And to validate it. And the same thing is the husbands, of course they're not going to admit it, all of them, but they also want their wives to really know their deeper inner feeling of how they feel when they go to shul, their issue. The part that bothers the man, different than it bothers for the woman, this child's challenge. And they want the wife to have a feeling and to feel along and to say and validate. If he comes home and he says, I was so embarrassed, we went to this wedding and our child walked in there looking like who knows what, and maybe to her this part doesn't bother her as much as bothers him, you have to really understand them and feel it and validate it. And if you designate a time for this, you're going to deal with this. You're going to say, yeah, I understand you, it makes sense, it's terrible that this is how you feel and this is how it is. We're forced to become therapists. We have to, anybody that's married should be. But we have to work together and understanding the other party's feelings. And I think that's a very, very important thing. Number 3, I think what's very important is to have a common mentor. You both decide that whenever we have a challenge, if there's something coming up, there's a change, a plan, we're going to ask, you try to work it out together. If it doesn't work, you ask this and this professional that deals with these kind of kids or whatever, and you say whatever they say, we both follow. Like this, there's no one to blame afterwards if it doesn't work out. There's no difference between the husband and the wife. We decided together that we're listening to this and this professional, or to this and this rav, or to this and this person, and whatever they say, that's what we're following. It's going to avoid so much pain and so much confusion. It's going to avoid all kinds of issues that could come up later. We say, listen, we decided and we're following and we ask Hashem that this person that we're asking should have a Shtiyat L'Shmaya. Whatever they say, that's what we're doing. It's very important to have a mentor, someone that we discuss, and it has to be an agreed mentor. That whatever this person says, that's what we're doing. And I think that could avoid a lot of issues and that could bring people together. Then I want to talk about something which I think is the most important of all of it, is to put away a time when you're going to deal with this issue, or any issue in life. If someone, let's say you're looking in a regular issue, you look for shidduch for your child is getting a little older, and so what happens is it's constantly on your mind. It's constantly on your mind. You think, oh, what are we going to do? What are we going to do? Shadchanim are not calling. This should be called. So, or people that have even dagas of parnasa. Some people that don't have parnasa. It's also constantly on their mind. What happens is it's stealing them from life because they're constantly thinking about that particular problem. Life is so much bigger than that. We have so much pleasures and so much good things in life. We could focus on our good kids. We could focus on ourselves and our health, and everything. And simchas, and there's always good things in life. But if someone has an issue that's bugging them constantly on their mind, they're stealing their own life. I was once in a old age home, and there was an elder yid over there that says in Tehillim, "B'skainem is bainon." You should learn from the elderly. So I had a shmooze with him. He was a very smart old yid, and I asked him all kinds of questions about life. And I asked him, if you could relive life again, what would you do different? Let's say you turn 20 now. What would you do different? He thinks a second and he says, nothing. I would live life exactly the same way I did now. The only thing I would change, I would never worry again. Whatever I worried for, I'm looking back, I was worried for my son, was not married, he's a Zayda already. I was worried about this. If it has to work out good or the other way around, it worked out anyway. It happened anyway. The worrying stole my time, it stole my life. And it sounds simple, but to me, this was such a deep message. Like you're giving an old yid an opportunity again. He says nothing. I'll just never worry again. You don't worry about how you're going to pay your mortgage. You don't worry what's going to work out with your child. Everything is going to work out the way Hashem wants it to be, and it's going to be anyway. So why should I steal? But the only way to do it is if we learn, I think this is a general gift you could give yourself, that you designate a time. So let's say every Sunday night, you sit down for 2 hours and together and you discuss this child. What are we doing next? Where are we up to? You have a file, a folder, you write down, last time the mentor said this, we should do that. Did anything change this week? Did it not change? Where we're going from here? And as soon as the time is up, you close that book, you leave, and the whole week you don't think about it. If it's emergency, you deal with it twice a week, 3 times a week, but you designate a time. The rest of the time, the rest of the week, you're focusing on yourselves, you're focusing on your other kids, you're focusing on the world, you're focusing on your business, and whatever it is, on your relationships, whatever it is, don't let it come in. If it pops up in your mind, you tell yourself, Sunday, 6 o'clock, we'll deal with it. You have a thought, we should call maybe this, or you write down the thing, you put it away, and then you push it. After a few weeks, what's going to happen is, I tried and tested this many times and worked with so many people. I was by Shabbaton this year for sister to sister, for divorced women. And I spoke there for them on Shabbos. And then, Matzah Shabbos, there was a lot of, some women sitting around and they wanted to it was like, it happened, it became like a workshop sort of. So I was elaborating on this topic, how it works exactly. We have our subconscious. Our subconscious constantly brings up the issues a whole time. So what's going to be with that? All the worries. What's going to be? So I told him it's just like a little child. If you have your little child, a 2-year-old, knocking, Daddy, I want a candy. I want to go already, right? And you say, 1 minute, I'm on the phone, right? I'm on the phone. Mommy, I want this. I'm on the phone, 1 minute. The child doesn't know what 1 minute means. Again and again and again. How can you get a child to stop bugging you? And say, you do something physical. You say, you see the clock, it has a stick. When the stick is going to be straight, that's when I'm going to take it. They're going to stop because they know that this and this time you're going to deal with it. Our subconscious is the same thing. If you give it a time, after a few weeks, the same way when you go to therapy, I always say the best thing is to do it the same day of the week at the same time. If let's say you go to therapy for a few weeks for something, you make it the same time, your subconscious is going to know, it's going to learn after a few weeks that Thursday, 3 o'clock is when I deal with this issue. And it's really going to let you live the rest of the time. It mamish works. It's like a nest. So you cannot live and breathe. I talk to parents, they say, I'm not sleeping at night, I'm not eating, I'm this and that, I'm so worried about my child. It's true, it's very worrisome, and this is one of the worst pains a person could have. The Gemara says clearly this is the worst pain to have in the world. I think, as I said before, I was by many different Shabbatons. Last year when I came to the Shabbaton for the teens at risk, to me I've seen more pain over here than I've seen in other places. So this is a very painful thing, but if you designate, you put a time, you're going to see it's going to become easier. The situation's not going to change. You're going to change. And you're going to just know how to deal with it. It's just going to become lighter. You'll say, you know what, I'm designating this time, and this is when I'm going to deal with it. The idea that we are in control is something that happens when we're 3-year-old kids, 4-year-olds, when we start building blocks and you say, I built something, I made something, and then you have it falls down, then you build it again, you start building up something, and you start taking control of things around you. You cook your own lunch, you know how it is. You start doing things throughout life. As you get older, we start believing in ourselves that we're building up, we could do something, we're productive, I know how to deal with this and I know how to deal with that. And of course men are different than women when it comes to this. Before there was GPS, a man would never stop to ask directions. He'd say, I know how to go there, even though you go around the block 25 times and still try to find, I'm going to figure it out, don't worry, I'm going to figure it out. Instead of stopping and asking someone, But we all are like that in different ways. These children, these boys and girls, when they go through something, they say, don't tell me how to deal with it. I know already. You're talking to these 17-year-olds, 18-year-olds, 20-year-olds, different ages, and they say, I know how to deal with it, it's okay, right? And we try to rationalize with them. And it doesn't work. You try to rationalize with with someone that's in that mode, it's not gonna work. There was a Chassidish Rebbe 150 years ago. It was called the Shimon Zelichover. He wrote a sefer. It's called Nahare Eish. He was more like like the Piazetzner Rebbe, a little more psychological Chassidish Rebbe, like a little out of the box, let's call it. He was a real Chassidish Rebbe, but he was a little. For those years, he was like, wow. And he writes something interesting. It says in the Torah, that the Gemara says that Moshe Rabbeinu asked him, David HaMelech asked Hashem, Tzadik v'raloi, right? We all know that question. Tzadik, if the Torah says that I'm going to pay you back on this world, so I said, if you're going to do the Torah mitzvahs, you're going to get in the B'chkois Tareichu, and if not, and then you see tzaddikim, that people, the righteous, tzaddikim doesn't mean that a person that does righteous, that lives the Torah way, doesn't do Lashon Hara, and does mitzvahs and the basics, it's considered a tzaddik, and they're having tzaras. So of course we know that there's all kinds of nice pshatlich and Torahlich and this way and that way. Eve was trying to figure it out. Nobody got an answer basically. So he says something interesting. He says, if someone is a real tzaddik, they're living in a higher level. They see everything is Hashem and everything is Hashgach L'Yom. It's all about the next world. It's not about here. And whatever Hashem does is good. To them, what? They don't have parnas. It's a big deal. They have b'tachon, they health issues, whatever they have. They don't care. It's not. They're living for Hashem. They're total. Devoted to Hashem completely. To them, it's not. So he says, what is tzaddik v'raloi? If someone has a child that's off the derech. That's the question that Moshe Rabbeinu asked Hashem. Tzaddik v'raloi, how could it be? All the other stuff they could deal with, but a child going off the derech, that's the most painful thing in the world. And how do we answer that? That's called tzaddik v'raloi. You know the game Stratego, right? So it was my kids are playing last week Shabbos. My 5-year-old and 8-year-old, I see them playing. And then the younger one comes and he wants to figure out how it works. And he says, show me, where's your flag? Right? You know, the flag is the last. So he says, I can't show you my flag. Show me my flag, the game is over. I said, tzaddik v'raloi. If Hashem tells us this answer, the game is over. Moshe Rabbeinu asked Hashem, Harainus kvedechu. Show me your face. I mean, we know Hashem is not physical, but show me your plans. That's my flag. The game is over. You can't be alive and see the flag. You can't continue the game. You can't continue the mission and the avoid over here if if I'm showing you the flag. You can't be Shemaim. I'll show you. The game is over. I'll show you what my plans were. I can show you everything. So when we go through this kind of challenge, we don't see the flag. Hashem doesn't show us the flag. He doesn't show us when we're going to get there, how we're going to get there. He doesn't show us his plan. But one thing I can tell you, just like this old Yid that told us that, looking back his life, and he says, the only thing I can tell you is, don't worry. I would never worry again. He says, I don't need to see the flag. Now I'm already seeing the flag. I'm 90. All the dagas that I had, all the issues that I had, my child over there, it all worked out to the end of the day. I'll think back. And so many things that it was just for an exercise. You remember like 2 years ago, I was so worried about this and this thing. What happened at the end? It worked out. It came from left field. Hashem sent some, miraculous thing, and it worked out. I just met the Yid that I know. He came to America to collect money. He was a Magachir. The first few kids he had money still. He's up to, I guess, younger kids. He can't. So he came. So he asked me if I should help him collect money for chasana. So he said, he was like so stuck. What's going to happen? And then out of left, right before he went back, he said he met someone that had made a promise. That's how it goes. Someone made a promise to Hashem that if this and this works out, he's going to give it's a huge sum. I don't know what it was, $10,000, $8,000 for a tzedakah, if something, and he's going to give it to the first person that needs it. And that person had a yeshiva. Something worked out. I think it was in the hospital, whatever it was. And this Makchi that I know went over to him and he said, he said, he lost it. He gave him a check or a cab, whatever it was. So he said, look, Hashem Mamish put it into my hands the day before I was supposed to go back. This is a first-hand story. I spoke to this Magachir. I have to remember the exact details, but this is the story. So looking back after something gets resolved or whatever, works out, whatever the way, you see that there's Mamish Yad Hashem and everything. Yad Hashem and everything. And it's just, we just can't be worried while it's happening. It's easy to say, hard to do, of course. But if we set a time and we set a place, we say, listen, this is the time I'm going to deal with it. The rest of the time I'm not focusing on it. it's going to make it much easier. It's hard to do, but you focus and you train yourself, it's gonna work out. I have to finish, so I want to say these words that the couples that work together, as hard as it is, after a big nisayon or a sign that we're dealing with, or different types of issues, if they worked it out together, they sometimes look back and say, who knows if this whole struggle was just to bring us to such a place. Because working out together and really trying to understand the other's perspective and back and forth and getting there and working together as a team through this challenge, the closeness that this couple gets to, nothing else could have brought them there. I've had many, many people tell me that when they look back afterwards, the child, just now in the hall, right before we came in here, there was someone gave me regards of a young couple that just got married a year ago, and they're living in Tom's River. And he gave me regards from them, and I said, so it took me a minute to chap who he is, and this is one of the boys that I dealt with probably 13 years ago, and he was like totally, he was on drugs, it was everything, like all the real stuff. And Baruch Hashem he was one of my first few boys that I worked with. I remember this Chavira, and he got married from regular. And his father, I remember at that time, told me, if you could bring him to just be a mensch, I don't need to be a yid, I don't need nothing, just he should be a normal person, he shouldn't have, we're good. And he's so settled, and also miracle, I worked with him, and then later we sent him to Neve, whatever, it was different, the whole. And Baruch Hashem, now he's doing great. It was mamash nisim. The parents had no way of seeing this child, and it was a very, let's call it aggressive type of nature, like it was hard nut to crack. But Baruch Hashem, it's just nisim, tefillas and nisim. So sometimes the parents look back and they say, wow, had I known, right? Imagine Eliyahu never comes to you and he says, don't worry, this child is going to go through a stage from now till 2 years, Purim time, he's going to chap and he's going to change. Are you still going to be so worried? You're going to be pained to see them doing crazy choices, but if you know Hashem sent you a shliach, that don't worry, the child is going to be worked out, you're going to be much calmer. Same thing, you're waiting for a shidduch, or you're waiting for children, right? Someone would say, I would use that time I had a yid talking at Israel also. He told me that he was bringing stuff from England to Israel, to Israel back, something, and he was caught, and they paskined him. He went to jail for 18 months. And he was thinking, he's a regular Ehrlich man, he was a curling man at the time, and he says, 18 months, I could finish a row. Took a longer Shechan Aruch. The time he came out, he went to the Eidach Reis, the Bezin, and he became a Yeridai Dayan. He figured out, so he utilized this time. He turned it into an experience that he was able to, and for the rest of the day, he's a Dayan today, I know. So, if we would just know things, right? If we would just shown that flag, right? We're not, but we have to look around the world and we see that eventually things always somehow, maybe it's not going to work out exactly the way we want to, it's not going to be, everybody goes through ages and stages. And there's no such thing as saying, this guy, there was one of my shir once, I gave a speech about late bloomers. And someone came and approached me later. I was talking about trees, that certain trees give out flowers later, and you have children. He had a child that the teacher said, the playgroup teacher, and this one and that, and the therapist said, you got to send this child for speech therapy. The child is not talking, and the child turned 4.5 and just started talking like a zayda. It never stopped. Like suddenly something still had to be developed in the child's brain, and everything. It was a late bloomer. Some of our kids are bar mitzvah boys. You see them putting on a hat. It's a date. 13 years, he bar mitzvah, he become. But the child is still he's still a 10-year-old in his brain. Is something wrong? It's our perception. We decided that schools have to go according to age. The classes and everything goes according to age. Maybe it has to go according to stage. So a lot of people are in different stages. You see 18-year-old boys and girls that are behaving like 13-year-olds, and sometimes you see them, it's okay, it's going to pass. Which you have to, of course, try to keep them from doing like crazy things that are detrimental for life, that it's going to be irreversible damage as much as we can, and of course, whatever. But we need to know that it's a time, it's an age, and it's a stage. It's going to, at the end of the day, so if we could designate a time, and I think we'll finish with this, that this particular time, let's say every Sunday at night, you sit down and you discuss with your spouse How are we dealing with this child? What are we doing next? What's our plan? Who is speaking to? What's the next thing? And the rest of the week, say, it's not Sunday night. You do it 3 weeks in a row. You're going to see immediate results. You're going to start seeing you calmer the rest of the week. Some people are afraid to let go because then there's something wrong with me. Why am I not thinking about the issue now? Probably something wrong with me. I'm not doing right. I'm cold blooded. What's going on with me? Why? No, I'm a healthy person, and I'm putting away time to deal with it. I don't want to deal with this issue the whole time. And I think this is the greatest gift you can give yourself on this issue and many other issues. Look at the time. Okay, Shloime.